Hi, I'm Doris Purchase, and welcome to Beyond the Frame, a podcast created just for you by Propeller Art Gallery, artists empowering artists in Toronto. Together, we'll take a deep dive into the hearts and minds of working visual artists today and their practice. In each episode, you will hear illuminating and intimate explorations of all things art, and you'll hear it in the artist's own voice. We'll talk process, inspiration, challenges, and much more. Everything you've ever wanted to know about art making or about the artists themselves happens right here. So let's sit back and have a listen, shall we? Today we welcome Jacques Descoteaux. Which ism is it? Under which ism would you classify your work?
I really prefer leaving it up to others to define my ism. I often get confused about the isms in art. A lot of standard isms and then neo-isms, post-isms. I know some people will disagree with me, but I find that focusing too much on these qualifiers chases people away, makes art feel a little bit highbrow, a little bit out of reach because of all the jargon. So if someone wants to categorize my work, they can do it. A lot of people see my paintings as landscapes. And landscape was the beginning of it all, but now it's moved beyond landscape. And I like to simplify things, so even if I tried, I wouldn't know where that fits in the world of isms.
Who's your muse? Influencers, educators, mentors? Who has greatly inspired you?
My formal background is accounting, not fine arts. However, I've studied with a number of artists, either in their studio or in outdoor workshops or at the AGO, the Toronto School of Art, or at OCAD. Some of these artists have had a significant influence, each in their own way, on my work. They include Ontario artists Barry Coombs, Eva Strijnik, Susan Lobier, Jacqueline Treloar. There are so many artists whose work I admire. I have a room full of art books. Some of my favorites include Mark Rothko, French painter Pierre Soulages, Chinese-French Zhao Wuqi, Helen Frankenthaler, Jean-Paul Riopel, Joan Mitchell, and perhaps Joan Mitchell and Joni Mitchell, French painter Nicolas de Stael, and American Wolf Kahn, and of course, Turner. And speaking of Wolf Kahn, I had the pleasure of attending one of his pastel masterclasses in New York some years ago, and I still relive that experience. And who is my muse? Well, perhaps I don't have just one, but as in Greek mythology, I have many, maybe 9, each inspiring me in their own way. And if I need to choose one, I would say it's Ireland. Having had the 2 residencies on the coast of Kerry, she still inspires me.
Materials matter. What are your chosen favorite tools and preferred medium?
I work mostly in oil paint on canvas, but I will also play with oil and acrylic on paper, working on mylar, doing mixed media work, pastel, sculpture. Just focusing on my oil paintings, I almost exclusively use Gamblin products. I love the luscious colors, but I also like that their products are most among the safest. I work with brushes, both high-quality brushes and good old house brushes from my local home hardware store, and metal palette knives. And I try all sorts of different tools and material at different times. I have a lot of colors in my paint drawer. I only use 2 or 3 in any given painting, and I will mostly let the colors blend on the canvas.
Slump secrets. What methods do you employ to get yourself out of a slump?
If I'm feeling in a slump, I sometimes look back at some of my older work, mostly looking at the colors I used on pieces that speak to me at that time. Or I'll choose paint colors in my paint drawer, and then using those colors, I stand in front of a blank canvas and just go for it. And if that fails, I don't push it. I read, I do nothing. I used to go to the Y when that was possible. And all that is for for me an opportunity to visualize what I want to do.
In the beginning. So tell me a bit about your process. Do you have a bag of tricks, lucky talismans, or habits? Where do you start? And more importantly, when do you stop?
I just start with a few colors and a blank canvas. One of the things I do is back away from the canvas in progress. When I'm working, I'm very close to the piece. Backing away gives me a full view. I have a work in progress in my studio. I was rushing for a Zoom meeting and didn't back away from it. Some parts of it are much too dark and flat. Lesson learned, once again. I work in many thin layers. I use a very simple palette. I blend the colors on the surface. I have many pieces in progress at any given time, and each piece is on its own when I create it. I don't work in series, though I will come back to certain themes that I find interesting. For example, I have an occasional series that I call Illusions of Black and White. American painter Wolf Kahn, when asked about how he decides when a painting is finished, and he's answered, "When I can't fix the errors anymore." I like that answer. I like to leave the painting unfinished. I want the viewer to add their own story to the work.
Calling all emo. What do you wish people to think or feel when they contemplate your work?
When people look at my paintings, I hope they're able to create their own narrative. I hope my paintings transport them to places they've been, to times they remember, or to places they imagine and places they dream about. I remember in one of my exhibitions at Propeller Gallery, at the opening, I was talking with someone about a specific painting. They told me they knew exactly where that painting was about. A short time later, someone else told me they knew where the painting was about, and it was different from the first one.
The struggle is real. Talk to me about your biggest challenges as an artist. What methods do you use to overcome these challenges?
When I started as an artist, my biggest struggle was to not care what people thought about my work. I remember the first time I showed one of my pieces in a group show. It was a colorful pastel painting. I was absolutely terrified if there was anyone else in the room. I feared that I might hear someone wonder out loud what this thing on the wall was. In time, I stopped worrying about it. Today, I still worry about what people might think, and then need to remind myself that I paint because I enjoy it, not because other people will enjoy it. And of course, it's a bonus if people like what I do.
Picture perfect. In your opinion, what constitutes a perfect piece of art? And what qualities in your own work would you signify as a perfect work? For example, perfect composition, confident brushstrokes, illustrating a concept, or something else altogether.
I don't look for perfection in any piece of art, and I never look for perfection in my art. I do look for continuity of colors. I use a very simple palette. I look at creating an impression. I was recently listening to something about Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, and I won't pretend to be able to explain exactly what it is. But I find I have somewhat of an affinity to Japanese sensibility in my work. I will simply give you a definition or two. Wabi is a quality of austere and serene beauty expressing a mood of spiritual solitude. And sabi means old and faded. So that's my idea of perfection.
Art speak. How do you feel about titling, discussing, and explaining your work?
I always title my work. I used to simply refer to my paintings as composition in whatever color it was, or I would number them, Illusion of Black and White, number 1, 2, 3. Today my titles come from poetry, from music, from expressions I like. Sometimes my titles are fairly obvious, tell a bit of the story, and sometimes they are a very personal response to the work. I don't mind explaining my work. In fact, One of the things I miss the most in the current environment is the artist talk we have at Propeller. Zoom art talks are just not the same. While I enjoy talking about my work, I don't want to explain it too much. I always want to leave something for the viewer to discover on their own.
Heavy metal or classical? What do you listen to while you work? Or is silence your thing?
Definitely not heavy metal. I generally listen to jazz, the likes of Miles Davis and Bill Evans and some of the newer ones. I also enjoy classical music, and sometimes I listen to music that can't fit in any category, music that doesn't have an ism. I was recently discussing my studio music choices. I never know which comes first, my choice of music influencing my work, or my work on a given day influencing my choice of music.
Why for art thou? Why do you make art?
Perhaps back to the original question. My ism is escapism. The desire to escape, to transport myself to imagined places, to imaginary moments, is always present in my works. My work allows me to travel in time, in place, in my mind. And my hope is to take you with me, not where I'm going, but to allow you to get on your journey in time, in place, in your mind.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Frame, a PAG podcast. To hear more episodes and to view the artist's works, please visit www.propellerartgallery.ca. Hosted by Doris Purchase, produced by Tracy Thomson, and recorded at the Orange Lounge Studio in Toronto. Also, the Propeller Art Gallery recognizes the presence of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Huron-Wendat nations. We acknowledge we are hosted on land governed by Treaty 13, the Toronto Purchase, the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, and the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. We are committed to peaceably sharing and caring for the resources around the Great Lakes and operating the gallery on the principles of inclusiveness as we continue to exhibit art created by artists from all over the world. Thank you for listening.